We are joined right now by Georgia Republican Congressman Tom Price. He's a member of the committee, and he is on Capitol Hill. Congressman Price, welcome to Bloomberg News. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Congressman, what are your thoughts about what some of the folks had to tell your committee today on Capitol Hill?
Well, I think this was very enlightening, whether it was from the Secretary of the Treasury or the Fed chair or FDIC chair or OCC. You get a little different nuance from each of them, and they have different solutions. They aren't all on the same page, which is our concern, because it appears to us that what the administration has put forward is a command and control philosophy about what ought to be occurring in the economy. And you and I both know, the American people know, that the way our economy thrives best is to allow that wonderful entrepreneurial spirit across America to thrive, with appropriate rules in place, but allow it to thrive. We don't think that's what we see right now from the administration.
Well, Congressman, as you know, the president and Mr. Bernanke and others in the administration have said that there really was no template for what happened here, that extraordinary times called for extraordinary measures. You talked about the nuances and different folks, Ms. Baer, Mr. Bernanke, Mr. Geithner, all bringing their ideas to the table. But how do you mesh that into one idea that is going to help jumpstart this economy going forward?
Great question, and I think what it speaks to is raising the level of the discussion and the debate. What should the rules be, not what should the products be? The president seems to believe, or at least his administration has put forward a white paper that seems to believe that the administration, the government, can dictate what each and every single product should be. This is what a credit card should look like. This is what a mortgage should look like. This is what a car loan should look like. That's not where we ought to be. We ought to be way up at the 30,000-foot level, setting in place the rules, appropriate rules, responsible rules, so that we don't get into the situation where we've been over the last year, and that is that things had run amok, not because it was a failure of deregulation, because somebody wasn't minding the store.
Congressman, have your constituents from Georgia been calling your office and expressing those concerns?
The concern that they have is that what they see coming out of Washington right now is just a big, heavy-handed government, a command and control government, that the administration believes it can make the best decisions for the American people, as opposed to allowing them to make decisions for themselves. That's what I hear from my constituents, and I think that's where the concern is, that we ought not have a governmental apparatus that is making every single decision for us, whether it's on energy policy or the economy or health care, or you pick it. In this instance, it's credit. And the question is, who should be deciding what credit is available? We believe that individuals and financial institutions with appropriate rules in place ought to be able to make those decisions.
And, Congressman, you know what the argument has been from the other side, that government, unfortunately, right now, is the only entity that is large enough to deal with these problems, the scale of these problems. How do you respond to that?
That's right. We got to spend more to keep from going bankrupt, right? That's the motto here. The fact of the matter is that the governmental policy that was in place was incompetent to take care of the situation. Those are the rules that we've got to fix. It wasn't that there wasn't regulatory apparatus in place. It's that the regulatory apparatus that existed said, oh, those aren't my responsibilities there. We need to have an apparatus in place that says whatever the entrepreneurial spirit of the American economy comes up with, we've got an apparatus to be able to regulate it,
but Congressman,
that we want to tamp down that spirit.
Congressman, might I ask, though, respectfully, that could an apparatus have even envisioned something on this scale, an economic downturn of this scale? This was not part of the paradigm.
No, but what a regulatory apparatus could have envisioned is that if something comes to market, like the mortgage-backed securities, like the credit default swaps, all those kinds of things, if those sorts of things come to market, then it ought to be somebody's responsibility to regulate it, not to say that those things can't come to market. And that's the philosophical question that we have to answer.
Congressman, Secretary Geithner, in his testimony, called for fundamental change to the U.S. regulatory structure. Would you agree that it needs a complete overhaul, or does it just need tinkering at the edges?
Well, neither one. I don't think it needs a complete overhaul, but I don't think that it's just tinkering. What it needs is the accountability. It needs the demand of the federal government, of the Congress and the administration, to say, look, these are your responsibilities. If there's a new product that comes available in the market out there, it's not that we don't want that new product to be available to the American people. It's that we want to make certain that the regulatory apparatus is in place to be able to appropriately regulate that new product. So there's this division between an administration that says, oh, no, you ought never have a new product, and what we believe, and that is that we ought to allow these products to thrive, but we ought to make certain that there's a regulatory responsibility and accountability for those new products.
Congressman, is the message that the American people, the one that they're receiving now, is that there hasn't been a system of checks and balances in place?
I think that's the case. The fact of the matter is that this isn't a failure of free market capitalism, and it's not a failure of deregulation. It's a failure of the regulatory apparatus that was in place to do their jobs responsibly and with accountability. And that's the thing that we ought to correct. That's more than just tinkering, but that's the thing that we ought to correct. Otherwise, we've got a command and control philosophy here from Washington that says, we know best, and we're not going to let you do, you fill in the blank.
And we should let our listeners and viewers know, as we're speaking to Congressman Price of Georgia, that the hearing on Capitol Hill has adjourned. That hearing of financial regulation, regulatory overhaul, that hearing chaired by the House Financial Services Committee and its chairman, Massachusetts Democrat Barney Frank. And this afternoon, part of the chairman's duties being taken over by the Pennsylvania Democrat Paul Kanjorski. We're joined once again by Georgia Congressman Tom Price. And Congressman, President Obama and Secretary Geithner want to counsel regulators. Will that work? Will that help, as you mentioned, to lessen that command and control philosophy?
Well, it depends how that is set up. In fact, the Republican regulatory reform proposal, the solution that we believe ought to exist, it utilizes our current regulators in a way that allows them to come together and say whatever a new product comes available on the market, that it's somebody's responsibility, and that responsibility is assigned by that group to make certain that they aren't stepping out of line, that there is a regulatory authority over them, instead of creating a whole new bureaucracy, which is the President's formula and Secretary Geithner's formula.
Congressman, I have about 30 seconds left. The President would make the Fed the systemic risk regulator, but critics say the Fed dropped the ball during the crisis. Should the Fed get more oversight authority? About 30 seconds.
I don't think the Fed needs more oversight authority, but I think that it needs to be audited in an appropriate way. We've got a bill before Congress to audit the responsibility and the actions of the Federal Reserve. I think that's most appropriate. But again, at the end of the day, what we want is that wonderful entrepreneurial spirit across this land to be able to thrive with appropriate regulatory oversight. That can be done without turning things upside down.
Georgia Republican Congressman Tom Price joining us from Capitol Hill. Congressman, thanks. We appreciate it.